Alrighty, welcome back to Shut Up and Ball. I am Aaron Chau, accompanied by Mr. John Harris. As always, we are back to react to week 4 of the NFL season. Not technically, but in a way, a quarter of the way through the season. I know there's 17 games and 18 weeks. Thanks for doing that, NFL. Math's not as clean as it used to be back in the day. Nonetheless, a lot to go over for the week. So let us dive right into it. I have to check. I'm not going to update the polls in regards to like the betting because I actually have not updated it yet. But all I know is you started off pretty well going into the afternoon games. And I imagine you did well because I think you got most of them right anyway, except for Kansas City. But we both were wrong in Kansas City to cover. Nonetheless, we'll get to that later, obviously. But let's start with the Thursday night game, unfortunately. And it was obviously between the Detroit Lions. They beat the Green Bay Packers 34-20. Huge game for David Montgomery. And definitely a little bit of a troublesome game, obviously, for Jordan Love. Easily can say his worst start as a pro. Nonetheless, what were your thoughts and reactions to this result?
Yeah, it did not go the way I expected. I'm pretty sure this was one where I think I might have changed my pick to where I was initially going to go Detroit, and then I kind of went on a spiel about how I felt like Green Bay was going to kind of announce to the world that you can't quite forget about them because it felt like a lot of people were sort of writing them off and already counting Detroit as like the winner of the division. Or even before the season started, people were talking about Detroit and Minnesota and not really Green Bay. And so I expected Green Bay to be a little bit more competitive, but they weren't. That said, I mean, I know your Packers are dealing with a lot of injuries. So, there's that. But at the same time, I don't know, Green Bay just didn't quite have the spark that I really thought they might. And Detroit looked really good. So, it's a good win for Detroit, especially when it comes down to later in the season, because I do think that this isn't the last we're going to see of Green Bay. I think they could make things interesting. And also, I don't know if I'm fully sold on Detroit just like running away with the division yet. So who knows? Later in the season, when they rematch, the fact that they won this game could be, important for a tiebreaker or motivation or something along those lines. But regardless, the Lions looked really solid. That said, I'm still surprised at how much they really love David Montgomery. Them in Atlanta make it interesting for why they draft certain players so highly and then just don't really use them. But who knows? At least with Detroit, there's still some time.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe that's just their plan to utilize him more than lean on Jahmyr Gibbs later in the season. I'm with you, and that's a confusion. Nonetheless, yeah, it worked for them, obviously. I think we're seeing how good that Detroit offensive line was. Or is, because they're just kind of like Philly, where they're just able to mash you, and even their poorer runs, they're still getting like 3 yards or 4 yards, which you take as an offense. So yeah, nonetheless, it's working for them there. And Jared Goff, kudos to him. I mean, starting the game off with a pick, it was looking like kind of like what you said. You're alluding to, like, oh man, this may be the Packers' night at Lambeau on the road. Throw a pick on the opening drive. So also kudos to the Lions defense there too, because they did a really good job of slowing down the Packers offense. But not much to mention more on Detroit's offense. Like I said, their line's just great, and it's one of the reasons why everyone was buying into them going into the season. And obviously Goff looked solid off that. For the Packers, kind of like, I'm starting to see the theme, and once again, maybe it's due to injuries. Losing no Bakhtiari, no Elton Jenkins. Obviously Christian Watson was on a little bit of a pitch count, and seeing that Aaron Jones could have been as well. But I know the running game has been working well, but I'm still a little bit concerned with the short passing game, because I think we're kind of seeing it throughout these first 2 games with Jordan Love, where it's just a lot reliant upon hitting those big plays. And not a lot of, the in-between, the bread and butter, the just moving the chains type plays and passes, especially short passing game. And, hey, maybe that's because we got a young receiving core and, still just trying to build the confidence of Jordan Love, maybe just inversely, because, maybe they don't trust his quick decision-making and making things easier. Just throw the ball downfield and maybe the rest will come. Like I said, I don't know the exact solution. to the Packers offense. But oddly enough, I'm still leaving this game encouraged from what I've seen from Jordan Love. Like I said, I know it wasn't pretty, took a couple of sacks, but I like what we're building long term. Obviously, we lost this game, and hopefully we can get the run game going, because it has been very concerning that A.J. Dillon has had a lesser than year, and I know Aaron Jones just got back, but I put more of that just on the regards to the offensive line, a lot of shuffling, and who knows what's going to happen with Bakhtiari here, as now it was quite a shocker. I thought that there's a chance he would play. And obviously I was wrong, because they put him on IR right before this game. So we'll see what happens down the line for the Packers. And yeah, it is a tough one to lose down the stretch, because next time we play the Lions, it will be at Detroit. And we know how much, the splits on Jared Goff in a dome and not in a dome there's a big difference. And he's much better inside. So that's going to be a different challenge at that point. But nonetheless, good win for the Lions. And putting some respect on their name. And I believe, if I remember correctly, this win does catapult them to being the leader of the NFC North, at least as of right now. So, good for the Lions, shaking off lost a couple weeks ago, and now they're right back in the driver's seat, 3-1, heading into week 5, and we'll see if they ever end up freeing Jahmyr Gibbs the way we want them to. But nonetheless, let's move over to the Sunday games, starting with the one in London, the ESPN. It was an Andy, whatever one. They also had that like Andy's Playhouse thing. I heard that got off to a rough start for them. I didn't watch this game obviously live. I watched the rerun, but the Jaguars took care of business against the Falcons, 23-7. What were your thoughts in regards to the Jags winning here?
A good one for Jacksonville. The offense got back on track, which if anybody watched the game, they were very heavily talking about that, sort of at the end of the game, and they asked Trevor Lawrence about it, and they still weren't quite happy with their performance. Notably, I was not impressed with the run game at all. Obviously, you look at the box score, 20 carries, 55 yards for ETN, but watching the game, it felt like they literally were just, the run game was just, all right, straight up the middle, just hand it to ETN and go. There wasn't any outside runs for the most part. There wasn't really any creativity in terms of tosses or counters or anything that felt unique. It was literally just line block ETN, try and pound it between the tackles. And I wasn't really a fan of it. I don't know if it was just they were trying to waste clock and they were content with 2 yards a carry, but it was not efficient at all. Nothing was really happening. There was no lanes. ETN wasn't able to find a spot to really explode, and that's kind of his thing, is he's good in open space. And so it felt like they could have done a little bit more on the ground, at least, to maybe gain some more explosive plays. But other than that, the Jaguars offense was back. They were looking good. I was impressed with Lawrence's ability to really feature both Kirk and Evan Ingram, because the Falcons made it an emphasis to take Calvin Ridley out of the game. And both Ingram and Kirk stepped up a lot from the slot. So good to see both of those guys get involved too, because they haven't had the strongest of starts to their seasons, and they both had solid games. And I feel like Lawrence got back on track as well. For the Falcons, kind of the same old. I felt like they could have used more Bijan. He had a lot of explosive runs, and yet they didn't really continue to feature him. He had 14 carries. This feels like a game where he should be getting 25. I know they're playing from behind, but Desmond Ridder just, unfortunately, I think I'm officially saying I'm off the train. I was never really on it in the first place, considering he was the 5th ranked quarterback in my draft class that year. But I've given him a chance. I don't want to say he's a bust or anything, and I still don't necessarily believe that, but I just don't feel like he's going to exceed the expectations I personally had. This is kind of what I expected out of him, is, he can make some plays, and we saw that with Jonnu Smith specifically. But outside of that, the inability to really do much through the air, just, I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. And even with his yardage, he was having to dump it down a lot, specifically to Bijan. Bijan had 5 catches. He was their second leading receiver. So it just felt like he's not really able to make a ton of plays. And we're once again in the situation like last year, where everybody's scratching their heads, wondering why the heck did you take Drake London and Kyle Pitts both in the top 10 if you're not going to use them? And then the people who are watching these games are wondering, like, all right, is it an Arthur Smith issue? Is it him? He's not calling plays for these guys because he knows his quarterbacks can't make it happen. I don't know what it is, but quite frankly, the offensive output's just not good enough. I personally would turn to Taylor Heineke at this point and just see what he can work with, because at the very least, Taylor Heineke showed the ability to feature Terry McLaurin in an offense. And so you got to think that if the problem is the quarterbacks here, when it comes to featuring London and Pitts, Taylor Heineke can fix that at least somewhat. And if he can't, then I think it's an Arthur Smith problem. I think it's a combo of both. And I don't know, if I'm the Falcons ownership, I would be upset. There's just no way that we drafted these guys this highly and they're coming out of every week with 30 yards a piece. Like, there's just no way that should be okay. It's gone on for 2 years now. Not a full 2 years. At least for Pitts it has, but for Drake London, like, this is the second year now. We're seeing the same things happening. So I don't know.
Yeah,
it feels repetitive. I'm making this rant every week, and it's frustrating.
Yeah, it's like
I'm not even a Falcons fan.
Yeah, it's like I was gonna say, it's like for the Falcons, it's just, I'm not sure where the saying comes from. Pretty sure it's military, but I'm not sure. But it's the same shit, different day for them. Like, it's just another day of another result, like you said, of Desmond Ridder. And I don't mean to talk on him, but he's just struggling to play the position. Like, even then, like, turnovers, like, at least last year you could say, okay, maybe like Mariota / him, we're good at limiting turnovers. But here we go this week, lost a fumble, 2 interceptions, and then on top of the fact that they're inefficient, like, it's just not a recipe for success at all. I'm with you. I'm completely with you. I was like, just go with Taylor Heineke this week, and apparently Arthur Smith has already gone on record saying, and this may change, this is Wednesday, October 3rd, but he's already kind of announced that Ridder is their starter, at least for week 5. So, like, I don't know. Is this just some sort of like shadow tank job where it's like, hey, we're good enough where you don't think we're tanking, but we're not good enough where we're obviously trying to win. I doubt that, but it just has. I'm with you. Like, it just has this weird vibe, and like, it sucks because we know that they have a good offensive line, especially run blocking. You've seen Bijan be amazing this year. He's lived up to what they gave him, them drafting him in the first round. And, like you alluded to previously, we've seen what Kyle Pitts can do with a passing quarterback in his rookie year with the corpse of Matt Ryan, because we saw what happened with Matt Ryan afterwards. So
literally a historic season. One of 2 rookie tight ends to ever get 1,000
And we've
yards.
seen moments like going to last year. Remember the last like month or so, like Drake London kind of got going. Like, he was getting a bunch of targets, and they were getting there.
He impressed both of us because neither of us were very high on him either.
So,
and he was looking good.
So yes, like, that kind of just leaves you to look at the Desmond Ridder there, because I'm not sure. I doubt they'll make a move, and I'm starting to really doubt that they will make it like a trade deadline move for a quarterback. I think it just feels like they're going to ride this out with Ridder for the rest of the way. Maybe Heineke does get thrown in there, but it's just such a disappointing result for the Falcons, for all the talent and all the investments, like we've mentioned, that they have put into that offense. And Arthur Smith's an offensive head coach. You can't have the excuse of, oh, well, we got a defensive head coach. So, maybe he's an offensive head coach. We've seen him have success in Tennessee, and like we said, even coming over here initially. So, I'm not sure exactly what the heck's going on in Atlanta. I know it's 2-2, so the sky is not necessarily falling, but it just feels like there's a lot more meat on the bone in regards to what the Falcons are capable of. And I don't know what needs to happen. Maybe the Falcons need to do what the Jets defense did apparently last week, and just rise. I don't know if you saw the report where they all went and talked to Robert Saleh about questioning their quarterback. Like, if I'm the Falcons, everything else I'm surprised they're not knocking on the door, on Arthur Smith's door demanding a change. So we'll see what happens with the Falcons. But like you mentioned, good turnaround win for Jacksonville. And apparently they're staying there because they do have, unfortunately for them, another London game this upcoming week. So I don't know. I'm just saying, if I was a player, I was talking to my stepdad about it. I was like, man, if I was a player, I would be upset. Like, man, I got to stay over here in a foreign land for a week. And I don't know, time difference. I understand it. It works for you schematically. Maybe, get more time used to acclimated to the time difference, so you don't have to travel back and forth. But whatever. I don't know. London doesn't excite me. But nonetheless, that is a London game. Let's go over to the Sunday games, starting with what many thought was supposed to be the game of the day. And it looked like it was going to be the shootout that we all wanted it to be. But then the Buffalo Bills pulled away late as they beat the Miami Dolphins 48-20. Another masterclass by Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. What were your thoughts here in regards to the Bills getting this key win?
Yeah, I mean, if anybody watched this game, first off, condolences out to the Bills when it comes to Tre'Davious White, because it's really unfortunate that happened. But the Bills were just the better team. Like, in terms of yardage, the Dolphins were able to move the ball, but for the Bills defense, it was the old bend but don't break kind of a situation. Because, I mean, in terms of, like I said, total yards, the Bills had 414 yards. The Dolphins had 393. So it's almost identical in terms of how they were able to move the ball. The difference is the Bills would score touchdowns and the Dolphins just honestly couldn't. And for the Bills, it was everybody. Like, Diggs got 3 touchdowns. Gabe Davis got a touchdown. James Cook got a touchdown. So, like, they were getting everybody involved. Josh Allen had a run. Like, it was pick your poison, honestly. Like, they could kind of just do whatever they wanted. There was no real struggle on the side of the Bills offensively when it came to moving the ball. I mean, I guess, like, you could, if you want to nitpick, you could talk about James Cook's efficiency on the game as a whole, but even he, like, you remove, him specifically, like Damian Harris on his 6 carries averaged about 5 a pop. Latavius Murray had 4 carries and he averaged 8 a pop. So, like, the other rushers were also efficient. And so I think it just goes to show that there is still a gap between Buffalo and Miami. I think you and I have both felt that way, but it felt like, at least through the first 3 weeks, a lot of people were, which, we always say don't overreact, but a lot of people were already sort of declaring Miami as, like, the best team in the league and the AFC and all these kind of crazy things. But when it comes to having to play, a big boy team like Buffalo, who can do it both, on offense and defense, and they can contend with the speed you have, and they can do things that are going to take Tua and that passing game out of it, outside of just trying to lock down Tyreek Hill. Like, they can, attack, Tua in the backfield, and they can make him uncomfortable, and they cannot allow him to ever settle in so that he can allow for Tyreek to get open. Those are the kind of teams that are going to give Miami trouble, and Buffalo showed that they're absolutely the team that's up to the task. So, yeah, really strong win for Buffalo, putting the league on notice too, because it felt like because Miami was doing so well, Buffalo wasn't quite getting the respect that they deserved, especially considering that, the opening night thing that kind of happened against the Jets. So, yeah, Buffalo has been utterly dominant the last 3 weeks, and Miami was unfortunately the latest victim.
Yeah, I mean, welcome back to the MVP conversation, Josh Allen. I mean, even though we've always had respect for him, yeah, like you said, like I just, I still chuckle, like even now, like at work today in the past, just at the people. I remember week 1, I saw, I'm not gonna out my good friend of mine. But I remember I saw him on Twitter. He was like, oh, or I guess X now, whatever. He was like, Josh Allen's just, a poor man's Brett Favre. I was like, okay, well, no. And then, like we've seen the past 3 weeks, he's taking care of the ball. And literally this game, more touchdowns than incompletions. And I know the Dolphins defense has been suspect, but it still has talent and they have familiarity. And the Bills still had their way with the Dolphins defense. You mentioned too, actually, I know they weren't efficient with the run game, but I liked their patience with it. Mm-hmm. Something we haven't seen, like we were mentioning. I like it, and although some James Cook's owners would want James Cook to get more of the share, as just a general NFL / Josh Allen supporter, I like that. Then even in the receiving game, although Diggs was amazing this game. We saw Gabe Davis get involved, and Cook had a huge key first down on his one catch. Is that one where Allen was kind of rolling right, and then flicked it over the defender, and then that was a key one. And then they just were able to get a lot of guys involved. Dalton Kincaid's kind of been a good little. I know he hasn't done a lot, but they seem to be involving him and doing a lot more 2 tight end sets too. I think that has been helping them, stay disciplined in the run game, but giving teams different looks and different personnel to deal with. And then Bills defense too. Like, I was critical of it going into the season, but I do have to give Sean McDermott credit in regards to just it feels like he always knows where to kind of put guys, and he knows teams' tendencies, and he's just so good at scheming up zones. As you mentioned, we saw this game, Tyreek Hill, only 3 catches. He had 3 of 58, but never really burned them. Same with Jalen Waddle. And, really outside, of Devin A-Chain making, being supremely efficient, it was the Bills kind of, like you said, managed Miami and that speed. They kind of contained it and did a very good job doing so. So credit to Buffalo, like you said, putting the league kind of back on notice and regaining control of the AFC East. And it's not a shocker considering the past few weeks they've gone on track. But like you said, everyone still was preoccupied by week 1. And, and obviously poor performance. But, yeah, Bills have seemingly turned it around. And I've been proving me wrong because I think I only had them in the wild card area. So they're looking much better than I thought. And, yeah, credit to them and Josh Allen especially for turning it around. But still being amazing and awesome. So big win for the Bills over the Dolphins. We're sure the Dolphins will bounce back once they get, Jalen Phillips and Jalen Ramsey down the line. But, potential concern for their defense.
And honestly, it's only week 4. So, obviously, we're saying all these things, but they're going to rematch later in the season. We'll see Miami come and adjust.
Yes. So, good win for the Bills. Stay 2-0 at home. Hand Dolphins their first loss. So, Dolphins no longer undefeated. Let's go over to the next game, which was the battle of bad, supposedly. But the game itself was close and actually kind of exciting as the Denver Broncos pull out a late a late rally down 21 to beat the Chicago Bears 31-28. So Denver able to bounce back from that 70-point drubbing they got the week before. And unfortunately for the Bears, it was a really good performance from their offense, but unfortunately they couldn't get it done in the end. What were your thoughts here in regards to this one?
We're talking about the Bears and the Broncos, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the game was more entertaining than at least we thought it was going to be. But I don't know how to talk positively about either of these teams, which is the crazy part. Here's the one thing I'll say. The offenses looked good.
Yes.
The offenses looked very good. I'm glad that Javonte Williams it sounds like he's not going to miss any time. If he does, it's going to be very short because I was a little bit worried about the injury, considering that, he came off the injury last year. And if it was another serious one, it was starting to feel like, man, he could be one of those guys that goes down as a what if, just because 2 significant injuries early in your career could be bad. So luckily he's going to be all right. And shout out to Jaleel McLaughlin because he looked good in his 7 carries. He got 72 yards, so it wasn't long, but or it wasn't a ton of sample size, but he looked solid in the little bit that he did. Also, Russell Wilson looked solid. Another week in which I feel like, in general, the offense is the one thing you can rely on, which is what. Did I get the pick right for this game? No, we didn't. It was 3.5, and they won by 3. But the whole reason at least I picked them, I can't remember why you did, but I picked them was because I at least felt confident in the Broncos offense, which is something we couldn't say last year. If we could take this year's offense with last year's defense, the Broncos would be probably undefeated right now. So, unfortunate, but the offense looked good. It's weird because the passing attack, none of the receivers really wowed you, but it was just a consistent effort from a lot of people, like P. Ryan Sutton, McLaughlin, Mims, Judy, even little Jordan Humphrey, and Chris Manners were getting involved. So it was very evenly spread. So good on Russell Wilson because his stats on the season have looked impressive. I sent you that picture earlier. But for Chicago, a pretty impressive, pretty depressing result. I don't know if they're tanking, but the Broncos defense was so bad that they made Fields look like a great pocket passer, like an elite pocket passer. There was a point where he was 23 of 24 with 3 touchdowns. He was almost perfect. And on the day he finished 28 of 35, 335 yards, 4 touchdowns, and he had the 1 pick. And this is even with him not even running that much. He only ran 4 times. So the guy was sticking in the pocket, and the Denver Broncos defense was so bad that he looked elite. But overall, I mean, Chicago, they completely crumbled in the fourth quarter. Denver's defense finally stepped up. They got that, what was it, a fumble 6, or was it technically considered a pick 6? I can't remember.
I think it's considered a fumble. Or is it considered interception, excuse me. The fumble touchdown. It was the touchdown. It was a fumble, and then he later threw the pick on the last drive. The pick later.
Yeah, I couldn't remember which one was which, but yeah, the unfortunate turnover for a touchdown that gave Denver life in that fourth quarter, and they closed it out. So yeah, I don't. These teams are both bad. I don't know what else to say. Like, the offenses looked good, but at least for Chicago, the offense kind of looked good because I think Denver's defense is really just that bad. And so it'll remain to be seen if Chicago can at least use this as a springboard and kind of bounce back, because Justin Fields had been getting kind of lit up in the media. And then for Denver, like, at least you got your first win of the Sean Payton era, but I don't really have much else positively to say because that defense just feels like it's going to prevent them from being able to continue to do so.
Yeah, it's a shocker. Like, okay, so one reason I did pick Denver also is because I was like, okay, at least they have Patrick Surtain and Simmons, but yeah, it's a bit of a concern that they let Justin Fields just carve them up via the air, like you mentioned. And only thing else I've really to add is just questionable decision making. Once again, I am fine with coaches being aggressive on fourth down and going for it in certain situations, but I just want to bring up 2:50 left. It's 4th and 1, and it was the Bears' second to last possession. It was tied 28-all. They could settle for a field goal, but they decide to go for it, and they don't get it. And guess what happens? Denver then decides, because it's the tie game, then they go down. Guess what? They take the field goal, and and guess what? You lost by 3. So I'm just like, a little bit there as they kind of know the momentum of the game. Denver had already kind of been on a roll, scoring 14 in the fourth. I'm just saying, Eberflus, like, take the points there. I know your defense hasn't been great, but at least take the points and put a little bit of pressure on Denver to make sure they do get the field goal. And then, hey, if they did, then I'm just saying, maybe go to overtime. Nonetheless, you already kind of hit everything. It's just these two are very poor teams. We'll see what happens going forward, especially with the Bears. Can Fields keep this up? And apparently they're already done with Chase Claypool. So, hey, maybe that's why it's opened things up. I'm not blaming Chase, but you just never know, in regards to that. But and unfortunate, because I know many were buying into the Roshan Johnson, especially for fantasy. Like, okay, this is the game that he starts popping off, and it's Khalil Herbert still. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, we'll see what happens with both these squads going forward, and if either one can turn their defense around, because that's been the main issue for both of them, on top of their struggling offenses at times. But there is that. Let's go over to Cleveland, where it was a little bit of surprise that Deshaun Watson did not end up starting. They had to start rookie quarterback Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and unfortunately for him, not the debut you wanted. Granted, you probably don't want to play the Ravens on your first start, as the Ravens took care of business against them 28-3. Tough sledding for the young rookie. But what were your thoughts in regards to the Ravens getting the dominant win here?
Yeah, just kind of an unfortunate situation for DTR, to be honest. Like, apparently they didn't know that he was going to start, I think, until either the morning of or the day before. Yeah. Like, Deshaun Watson he got cleared to play, but they gave the ultimate decision up to him, and he said he didn't feel good enough to go, which I respect. Like, I don't think Deshaun Watson is like, I don't think there's a situation where they're like, oh, we suck. I want to sit out. Yeah. Like, I mean, they're coming to this game 2-1. So I don't think Deshaun, if he truly wasn't good to go,
he wasn't playing hooky.
I believe what you're saying. Yeah, exactly. I don't think he was dipping out on purpose. Like, I think if he felt good, he would have played. And so he didn't feel good. Short notice for DTR. And you're playing the Ravens, and it's a tough divisional matchup. The Ravens are a really strong team, and it's just unfortunate. Like, it's his first game. this, I would say the Ravens and like honestly just any of these divisional games, but specifically like the Ravens and Steelers feel like for the Browns, like those are kind of the worst games you could start because like even if maybe they're not as good as say like a team like Buffalo, they just know you so well, like your team as a whole, your coach, all those kind of things, that it's going to be tough. It's going to be really hard, and that's just kind of how it was. He threw 3 picks. Not a good game, not a pretty one, but quite frankly, what did anyone really expect in this one? There just wasn't much there, so it is what it is. For the Ravens, I mean, good win. You handled your business. They didn't really do anything that impressive offensively because they got short field on a lot of stuff. But, like I said, when you're in this kind of a situation, you're playing a rookie quarterback in his first game who's a backup, who's not supposed to be playing, you don't got to do anything too fancy. Just get out there, get the win. That's what they did.
Yeah, I mean, just take care of the ball. Don't give him any easy opportunities.
Right.
And yeah, just to mention about the Ravens too, like why when the Ravens I say like the Ravens, and I agree with you, the Steelers are one of those teams that you just don't want to play week 1 or have your first start against, is because they do a lot of crazy stuff. Like just some would say unorthodox, like I've mentioned before, where like they're not afraid to, zero blitz or even just throw some crazy blitzes where it's going to leave, like it's going to abandon a rule, like, oh, we're just going to leave this part of the field wide open. But, they have calculated gambles is, I guess, the best way to say that. Calculated, risks. They're very good at that, at assessing those, especially with their defenses. So, yeah, tough start for the young rookie. And like you already kind of hit it all. Like Ravens, they just took care of business. Lamar, Mark Andrews, and good to see Zay Flowers still in the trust tree, and the run game do good enough against the Browns. And I'm not gonna poo-poo on the Browns defense too bad, because like we mentioned before, it's tough whenever your offense turns the ball over 3 times and is not even generating much altogether. So we'll see if Watson will be healthy next week to get the Browns back on track. But a huge win for the Ravens as they grab control of the AFC North going into week 5. So good for them. Going to another blowout, staying in the AFC North. This one was more of a surprise blowout. Nonetheless, the Tennessee Titans, they go and beat the Cincinnati Bengals at home 27-3. We talked about before, like everyone freaked out about Josh Allen over one performance, but it's obviously time to get concerned about the Bengals as they fall to 1-3 and the offense does not look good. And then, Jamar Chase had the comments after the game that he's always open. So what were your thoughts in regards to the Titans pulling off the upset?
Yeah, not a good look from Cincinnati. And I'm going to be honest, because I've heard the people saying that Joe Burrow's injured and that's they're giving him the excuse. And if that's the case, they need to sit Joe Burrow because it's not working. Like the offense is looking pitiful. This has been 4 weeks in a row now that we've seen this where the offense is just not good. It's not good. And so if this is the result of Joe Burrow being hurt, because we know how good Joe Burrow is, we know what he's capable of. We are all saying that this is not who Joe Burrow is. He is capable of far more than what he's currently doing. And so if the reason that this is happening is because he's hurt, they have to make a change because, quite frankly, I think a backup quarterback would be better than what we're seeing out of Joe Burrow right now. And it's just not good. It's just not good. If it's not an injury, then I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's a scheme thing. I mean, I've never really been a big Zach Taylor guy, so maybe they're getting figured out. Maybe Joe Burrow's got the yips. I don't know what's happening. I'm not a Bengals fan, so the Bengals fans, like, they would know more than me. But if it's because Joe Burrow's hurt, then I think something needs to be changed and let the guy rest and get him fully healthy because it's not working. And if it's not the injury, then some change needs to happen. They need to have some players-only meeting behind closed doors where they all yell and cry at each other or something. I don't know because, quite frankly, I mean, I don't know where you put. Did you have the Bengals winning the division? We both had them made in the playoffs for sure.
Yeah,
I know I had them winning the division.
I had them beating the Bills in the wild card. It was like a spicy wild card, but not that I was intending it. But it's not looking good. It's looking inverse at best now.
Yeah, so I mean, regardless, point being, we both expected them to win this division. They're now sitting at 1-3, and at 0-2, we were like, okay, it's whatever. 0-2, like they were in this situation last year. 1-3, things are starting to look a little bit dire because I don't know who they. Hold on, I'm going to pull up the schedule for the Bengals because I don't know who they have next, but I imagine things might not get any easier. Okay, next week they have the Cardinals. So, I mean, that could be a bounce back game, but the Cardinals, like, they've been competitive. They've been in all their games. So, although I say bounce back just because in terms of pure talent, like the Cardinals don't necessarily have a ton, that still could be a game that they lose. And then after that, they got to play Seattle, San Francisco, and Buffalo all back to back to back. Like,
they do have a bye week after Seattle, but still.
Yeah, I mean, so like you can kind of, I guess, at least you got an extra week to prepare for San Francisco, but still, like those are 3 tough games in a row. Then you got to play like Houston, and they've been looking good, followed by Baltimore again, who they already beat you. Like the end of your schedule is at least a little easier, where I say a little because you still have like Kansas City at the back end there, but you don't want to be in a situation towards the end of the year where you have to win out because. Even then, you're still playing Pittsburgh. You're still playing Minnesota, who can score a lot. You're still playing Jacksonville. You're still playing Kansas City. Like you're still playing Cleveland again, and they crushed you week 1. So it's, I don't know. The Bengals schedule does not look like it's going to ease up at all, and so they have to figure something out because, although after week 4, for most teams, I'm saying I'm not overreacting. Considering what's happening in Cincinnati right now, it might be time to overreact.
Yeah. I'm with you. Like, I'm not like, honestly, I think that, I think we didn't talk about it much, but obviously they should have probably sat Burrow, beforehand, kind of like how I'm not saying Jamar Chase is till all be all, but hey, maybe he was right. Maybe they should have just let him sit until an extra month, the first 4 weeks. Cause I mean, the whole, like you said, like you've been saying, like, I think the outlook would be much better if now Burrow comes back. Okay, he's had a month to rest, and then hey, let's go. Even if they're 0-4, it's a better outlook as opposed to right now, 1-3. Burrow has not looked good at all, like everyone knows. But the injury's still a lingering thing. It's still a factor. Like you can still see it kind of in this game, and you can just tell at times he can't step on the gas or to even make time or to even try to make some throws downfield that we've seen him making his sleep the past couple of years. So yeah, like I'm with you. I think I think it's definitely the injury is playing a factor. It's obviously limiting Burrow and then thus limiting the offense. And then on top of this, you mentioned it could be schematical. Yeah, it just also seems like it's just a little bit. I know Jamar Chase is always open, but it's just there's not a lot of like pre-snap motion anyway with the Bengals, and so it just seems like they are already kind of simplistic, and we know that their run game is lesser than, to say the least, especially because we know their O-line is not very good. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can even pull this off. And now T. Higgins is dealing with a rib injury, which is definitely going to be lingering for a while because he's saying, hey, it's just based on pain management. So who knows if he gives it a go soon. So yeah, and I thought they would be leaning on their defense would be able to carry the load this week, and kudos to the Titans because they, in typical Titans fashion, they just figure out ways to manufacture points and yardage. It's not sexy, but they get it done, and vintage kind of Derrick Henry performance here, even through in the old Derrick Henry touchdown pass that they like to do. So yeah, I mean, we'll see if Cincinnati can right the ship. Once again, it's just one of those where like I think you agree where there's no like outside addition like a free agent or trade that's really going to fix this because there's no real markets or no real offensive lineman on the market that they can fix these issues with. So yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if they do shut down Burrow for a game, but honestly, I don't think that they will. It seems like that they're going to try to ride this out, even though I disagree because I know you want to win this season, but you invested literally a lot of money into this guy. And I fear that it will get worse and become a bigger issue, but hopefully not. So,
and I'm just thinking too, like if you want to give him some rest, like do it now before the bye week. Like
yes.
Give him now. You see what happens with Arizona. If you beat them, then maybe you rest him again against Seattle.
Yeah, bonus.
If you lose, then maybe you bring him back and he plays, and then you give him the then you have the bye week so he can rest after the Seattle game. But I don't know if he's dealing with an injury and this is, like I said, the result. Playing doesn't feel like it's really changing anything. It's like he's not a game changer. Yeah. He's not affecting the games.
Yes, he is. Yeah, he is a shell of himself, to say the least.
Yeah.
Right now. So, yeah. And you mentioned just 1 point too. You mentioned the end of the season at Pittsburgh, week 16, and at Kansas City, week 17, and then at Cincinnati against the Browns, which are they could easily be. They're probably going to be in that wild card picture, so that game's going to matter to them too. Like, it's an uphill battle. Like you said, at the end of the season, maybe you start thinking ahead a little bit, give him some rest so that, hey, maybe you at least have a shot at the end of the season, as opposed to end of the season, he's still dealing with it, So we'll see how they approach that, that issue going forward. But key win for the Titans, as they're 2-2. So gosh, somehow, some way, they keep figuring it out. But speaking of figuring it out somehow, some way, let's go over to the LA Rams, because they were able to figure. They got ahead early in this game. The Indianapolis Colts came back, but they were able to win in overtime over the Colts, 29-23. Quite a timely moment for Puka Nacua to get his first NFL touchdown. It was the walk-off touchdown in overtime. What were your thoughts in regards to the Rams winning this one?
It was closer than it needed to be, because the Rams in the second half kind of allowed the Colts to come back into this one. But good win for the Rams. Like, Kyren Williams once again looked good. Puka Nacua once again looked good. Like, these guys are really just offensively carrying the workload for him. Matthew Stafford looks solid. So I don't know. It feels like when Cooper Kupp comes back, maybe this offense can actually kind of keep things afloat, because you and I had heavily criticized the lack of talent, and yet somehow, some way, the Rams do it again. They just keep finding these diamonds in the rough who just happen to become contributors, and at least so far, Puka Nacua and Kyren Williams have completely outperformed what anybody expected them to do. So, and then on the Colts side, like, Anthony Richardson had a hell of a game. I'll give him that credit, because coming back from the injury, although his completion percentage was pretty poor, he had a solid performance. He ran for 56 yards, got another rushing touchdown. He adds 200 in the air, 2 touchdowns once again. So, like, he had a solid outing. I think it was that touchdown to Mo Alley Cox that was the one that I'm thinking of. That was pretty impressive throw from him. So it might have been the Ogletree one. I can't remember which one it was, but one of his touchdown throws I thought was a pretty impressive throw. So he had a solid performance, and they couldn't get it done, but we'll see if Jonathan Taylor comes back. I know that he was activated off the PUP list. They've opened his practice window, but I think he still says he doesn't want to play for the team. But I think both teams, the Rams and the Colts, at 2-2, are in decent positions. Like, they've looked better than we expected them to be. So I can't complain about anything I saw out of this game for both teams, because the Rams, I think, are a little bit more desperate to win, considering the state of their overall roster. But for the Colts, like, considering what everybody, even myself included, thought Anthony Richardson would be, a very raw talent who I expected to take a lot longer, what we're seeing out of him, I'm already impressed, and sitting at 2-2 and potentially getting reinforcements back, I think they're in a good spot.
Yeah, like you mentioned, the completion percentage, 11 for 25. Like, it's why Anthony Richardson, I think they decided to start him right away. It's because you got to let him get through those rough bumps, and early on this game, not just him, but the offense had some struggles. A couple of drive stall 3 and outs, and and then I think a fumble early on. I think that was second, third possession, if I remember correctly. I remember Richardson himself fumbled there. So, hey, just a few things to clean up in regards to the Colts, and hey, they win this game. But yeah, I mean, regardless, fighting credit Zach Moss. He's kind of having a little bit of a career revival here. Maybe it's a system, but nonetheless, Colts did enough to get back in this game and, like you said, almost win. But obviously they didn't even get the ball in overtime. So credit to the Rams. Only thing else I have to add is I'm just hoping that I'm hoping that the Rams pass protection gets better, because it's tough to see Matthew Stafford. I know he only took 2 sacks this game, but he was as pretty much the whole year has been, he was under duress a lot, taking a lot of other hits that don't count as sacks. So I know he's all of a sudden now dealing with the hip injury. Probably, he'll probably tough it out. But yeah, can't wait to see, like I said, how this offense looks when they get Cooper Kupp back, and how that all works, and obviously what Cooper Kupp looks like coming back, because obviously this hamstring injury he's been dealing with has been a bigger issue than they thought it was, because earlier in the season, not before the season, in training camp. So Rams gutting it out, and the Colts, like you said, still both these teams 2-2, still in a good driver's seat for competing the rest of the way. So kudos to them. Let's go over to an NFC South matchup between the Bucs and Saints. Another bit of a blowout here as the Bucs win 26-9. Good game from Mayfield and the defense there. What were your thoughts in regards to the Bucs winning over the Saints?
Good win. I expected this one to be a low-scoring game, and I thought that the Bucs would probably score in like the teens. And so I'm not surprised at what I saw in terms of the Saints, but I did think the Buccaneers would maybe struggle to score a little bit more than they did. But they were able to, move the ball. Now, they did get a little bit lucky in terms of there was that one, what was it, a Baker interception or fumble? They turned the ball over like in the red zone and then immediately got it back. And so that gave them another chance, and they capitalized on it.
Interception, and then the Saints fumbled the very next play.
Yeah. And so they got a little bit lucky, but overall, like a solid performance from the Buccaneers offense. As a fantasy owner of Chris Godwin and Rashad White, I was not very happy with the goal line stuff that we're running here, like Trey Palmer getting a short touchdown.
A fade too, like just
Devin Tompkins, I think, was also like they were within the 10-yard line when he scored. Cade Otton was a short touchdown. Like, I feel like maybe we could just get Godwin or Rashad White some of these, red zone touches. But other than that, they got the job done. And for the Saints, the offense still seems to be somewhat of an issue. Welcome back Alvin Kamara. Dude got 13 catches. But other than that, they were not really able to get much through the air. I don't know how healthy Derek Carr is, but only 127 yards. That's just not going to get it done. Like, it felt like they could have maybe relied on Alvin Kamara a little bit more in the run game, because he got 50 yards on the ground, but he was averaging 4.6 yards per carry. He looked fresh. He seemed like he could do a little more damage on the ground. So I'm not completely ruling out the Saints, but it felt like this was a game that maybe they could have done a little bit better in.
Yeah, I want to comment on that. You mentioned Derek Carr definitely was not him, and it definitely looked. Yeah, he definitely seemed limited. I believe I saw where like Kamara had the most like receptions for like the least amount of yards, like since that's ever been recorded. No one has gotten that amount of receptions and had that little amount of yards for Alvin Kamara. So, and I don't think that's Kamara. I think that was just the fact that Derek Carr couldn't do much. It just seemed like he was. Obviously you can look at the stat. 23 completions for only 127 yards, so you're barely getting 5 yards of completion, and that includes yak and such too. And it was tough sledding for the Saints. I'm kind of questioning. I'm not questioning the medical staff. I'm questioning like the decision making. Like, obviously Derek Carr was extremely limited, so why throw him out there? I don't know. It seems like the Bucs figured that out too pretty quickly. That hey, it's just a bunch of short underneath stuff. They're not really. It seems like Derek isn't able to take as many shots downfield. And it goes to show because Kamara had their longest reception at 14 yards. Or sorry, no, it wasn't Kamara. It was Michael Thomas, 20. Excuse me. But still, we know Michael Thomas, and he's not a deep threat, especially not at this point in his career. So very concerning decision making there. And then for the Bucs, they just keep trucking along, even though they lost Mike Evans middle of this game. Like you mentioned, guys like Devin Tompkins, to your chagrin, a bit, your fantasy chagrin, stepped up and filled in. And Chris Godwin, credit to him too, because I was kind of down on him, especially fantasy going into this year, because I was like, man, he hasn't looked the same since coming off the ACL injury and such. But he's looking like he's regaining his form, and especially like under Baker Mayfield, I was like, come on. But kudos to Baker, he's playing the position correctly right now, doing what needs to be done to win games with the Bucs. And who knows? Maybe Baker may be finding a home in Tampa Bay, but I won't overreact. I won't say that yet for sure because it's only week 4. So we've seen, just for context too, when we say don't overreact, because remember, was it 1 or 2 years ago when the Panthers started off like 3-0 with Sam Darnold? They're lighting the world on fire, and then it all just came crashing down very fast. So yes, that's what so prime example of let's not overreact. So we'll see if Baker and the Bucs can continue, but I do like their formula for success, and good for Todd Bowles in his second stint as head coach. I know it's his second year as the head coach, but second stint, Jets one didn't work out very well. So that is the Bucs. Good win for them. Divisional win over the Saints. Now let's go over to what was one of the surprisingly close games of the weekend, and it was in your division between the Philadelphia Eagles, who managed to get the win over the Washington Commanders. They needed overtime, but nonetheless, they got the job done. Eagles win this one 34-31. What were your thoughts in regards to your two divisional rivals going at it?
Yeah, I thought the Commanders were actually going to potentially take this game. Like they actually looked really good in this one, and it was in large part due to Sam Howell. Like the guy looked good. I mean, on the ground, they were able to get some stuff going with Brian Robinson, but largely overall, on the ground, they were kind of inefficient. But Sam Howell was able to do it both with his legs and through the air. I mean, total, he got 330 yards. He threw a touchdown, didn't throw any picks. So, yeah, I was impressed with Sam Howell. I was impressed with Washington's offense overall. Shout out to Eric Bieniemy, their offensive coordinator, because he's kind of got those guys cooking over here. This is their second game, I believe, on the season that they've scored 30 points. I don't think they've done it 3 times, but I know they did it against Denver. So, they're looking good. And for Philly, same old issue that I've repeatedly mentioned throughout the last year, basically, that they're an amazing team, and the one thing that is going to hold them back is that secondary. And lo and behold, once again, like I said, Sam Howell throws for basically 300 yards. The secondary was the one thing that kind of screwed him here. I mean, I guess you could put some of the blame, on the front seven too, because they only got, 5 sacks, which is still like a good amount, but I mean, when Sam Howell's throwing that well, you could ask for more considering. And the only reason I say you can blame them with only 5 sacks is because we know what that defensive line is capable of. Like they could go out there and get double digits in any single game. So you could ask for more from them. For any other team, 5 is like a solid number. But for the Eagles, you could say 5. Come on, we can get 8. We can get 10. Like let's get some bigger numbers. So I say that out of respect for the dominance that defensive line has, not asking them like they have to do more. But yeah, overall, I mean, the Eagles, they managed to get it done. They came out with the clutch win, so you got to give them credit for that. The offense was able to move the ball. A.J. Brown had a monster day. But yeah, I mean, the secondary is the one concerning part, and I don't think it's going to, well, I mean, it could because maybe they trade for something, but I think both of their nickel corners are looking at season-ending injuries right now, and their safety depth is also pretty thin, so.
Yeah, so concerns for Philly. And yeah, really, like I still have a little bit of concerns in regards. I know that A.J. Brown had an awesome game. I put that more on the fact that Jack Del Rio, feel free to throw a double team anytime his way. Like a few times, just like even one of the touchdowns, it was like later in the game. It was it was like a play action, but once again, it was 1-on-1, and he, the corner kind of took the cheese on the run for a second, and boom, A.J. Brown went right past him. Like at some point, maybe you stop the guy that's just killing you. I'm just saying. Right. But luckily, I survived. And also, I will say, I was facing on fantasy, so that was no fun. Luckily, I won that league. Thank you, Christian McCaffrey. Anyway, in regards to Philly, like, yeah, I'm still, like, encouraged. Like, not encouraged, but I'm not going to absolutely say, though, the sky is falling. Obviously, they're the only... No, Niners are. But 4-0, still doing really well. But yeah, the concerns with their secondary are very real, like you mentioned. And, I mentioned linebacker depth. It could be an issue. I know Morrow had 3 sacks, but like you mentioned, pass coverage-wise, they're still lacking there. In regards to Washington, like I said, I like what Sam Howell did. I think he just needs to... It's tough because I like that he is fearless in the pocket. He's not afraid to sit there and, and just wait for the play to develop. Just like him to get out of dodge, like maybe, have that be more sensitive to get out of there because I know he took 5 sacks this game, but let me try to. I think he's taken a lot of sacks throughout the whole year. I'm trying to remember. He's had like every game he's taken like multiple sacks, and not only for health wise, but for team wise, it's tough whenever you're taking a bunch of negative plays, to keep the offense on track, as they say. So, nonetheless, confidence boost for the Commanders, and for the Eagles, obviously they escaped there. But I'm with you. Like Commanders, they had opportunities to put this game away or win it late. They just didn't pull through. Nonetheless, though, I will say, last point, Eric Bieniemy, I think he deserves some credit here in regards to how their offense has gotten much better. Granted, and and the fact that Sam Howell has gone off to a better start than I think many expected. I think some kudos need to go to him and that staff. So we'll see if the Commanders can keep building on that momentum, and if obviously Eagles, they're going to keep doing their thing. But like we said, some things to be concerned about moving forward for Philly. So we'll see what happens for them. Let's go over to the Vikings, who wasn't the high scoring game that I think some expected, like myself, for them to put up against the Panthers, but nonetheless they get the win, 21-13. Who would have expected 2 defensive touchdowns here? I know the score looked close, but it was a strugglesville for the Panthers offense again. What were your thoughts in regards to the Vikings win here?
Good win for the Vikings. They needed this one considering the 0-3 hole that they were in, so they get their first win of the year. That said, it wasn't the most inspiring. Kirk throws 2 interceptions. He only gets 139 total yards.
And what was a pick 6?
Yeah, 85 of those yards go to Justin Jefferson, so nobody else really stepped up on the day. I don't know. Alexander Madison had a good performance and getting 95 total yards, but just quite frankly, considering the talent, they covered, which is what we were hoping for, but considering the talent difference in terms of, the high-end guys that Minnesota has, like Hawkinson, like Jefferson, it feels like they should have been able to put up a lot more points in this one offensively, and I don't know. I don't want to put too much harp in it because it's not college. Like in the NFL, a win is a win, but I'm just trying to look ahead to the future of, all right, Carolina is an okay defense, but if Minnesota stalls out like this again against some other better defenses, then there's just no way they're going to win because Minnesota's defense is only they have some bright spots, but they don't have a ton else going for them. And also a lot of their defensive work that came in this game just felt like the inexperience of Bryce Young, the not great offensive line from Carolina. I don't know if you watched this one, but when I was watching some plays in this game, there was just a lot of safety and corner blitzes that Minnesota was running where a guy would just kind of come through unblocked because they were sending 6 and they only had 5 blocking, and that just kind of kills the play, put Bryce Young under pressure. He wasn't able to do much with that. And Carolina didn't really adjust when Minnesota would continue to do that on crucial third downs. So I don't know. That just felt like it didn't feel like the most impressive thing because that kind of feels more of a gimmick type thing where if you're going to go play a better team, they're going to recognize that you're going to do that, and they're going to keep a tight end or running back in, and boom, the way that you were stopping their drives is completely eradicated. So,
yeah, I wonder, and I don't think he is, but I just wonder, if they don't get a win anytime soon, and the offense still looks like this, and I know the offensive line isn't great, and it's his first year as technically head coach, but don't be surprised if there's some eyes in maybe Frank Reich, their head coach, his seat gets a little hot because he got the number 1 overall pick. They have a first round tackle in Iquanu on one that they invested a couple of years ago, and Terrace Marshall, second round guy. So I don't know. This offense, it's very concerning that they have the only time they really kind of had success was with Andy Dalton. Like I said before, I know Bryce Young's young, he's still learning the offense, and maybe that's something that they need to work on. Like you said with the blitzing, is they need to work on their pass protection rules, or him setting some some audibles or some sort of adjustments, so that because it's a copycat league, and other teams are going to take away what the Vikings did. Not that they really need to, because the Panthers, we know the Panthers O-line is suspect, but just to, to add more things that they can throw at this young quarterback and that this, poor offense, it could be something that some more issues that could be imposed on them down the line. And, run game, right, non-existent. It's tough. Like I have to, it's hard to grade Bryce Young right now, because like I feel like there has to be a little bit of a curve because of the situation around him. But one of those reasons why we both felt that Stroud was better. Or right, you had Stroud as one also.
Yeah,
yeah.
I was big on Stroud for like a year.
Yeah. So, but the only reason that and I mentioned it was Bryce Young's size, and like he saw at times and size matters in regards to not just taking hits and but hey, can you like make plays within the trash of the NFL and things like that, or and I'm just saying, it just seems like it's been a concern for me with Bryce Young going into this year, and that concern has not been put to rest for me, as in regards to evaluating him, and the Panthers haven't helped that. So we'll see what they can do. And yeah, for the Vikings, like we said for the preseason, like, did they get better? Not really. And if in this league you're not getting better, you're gonna fall behind. And we already mentioned, last year was a little bit fluky. We're kind of starting to see that right now come to light. And yeah, they've lost a piece, in Dalvin Cook and such. But we'll see if they can build off this. Obviously, they really needed this win, so good for the Vikings. And for the Panthers, they got a lot of work ahead of them. We'll see if they can somehow right this ship going forward. But speaking of CJ Stroud, let's go to him, because he absolutely balled out. He disproved my Pittsburgh theory because he and the Texans win against the Steelers 30-6. It was domination pretty much from the get-go. What were your thoughts in regards to the Texans getting a win over the Steelers here?
Yeah, I mean, the Steelers' offense is still it's pitiful, man. It's pitiful. And I will say, shout out to Najee Harris, because at least he bounced back this week. He was their leading receiver, 1 catch, 32 yards. Then their second leading receiver is Jaylen Warren, the next running back, 6 catches, 26 yards. So shout out the running backs, because at least they looked good. And also, Najee had 71 on the ground. So the guy eclipsed 100 this game. But, I mean, I don't think Kenny Pickett is it. I didn't think that when he came out. I wasn't super high on anybody in that class. The highest I was on was Matt Corral, and he is not paying that at all now. He did get injured again, which was a pretty big concern considering that coming out he was injured. But yeah, I don't know. That whole QB class is just looking like there's nothing really there. And I don't know. Maybe I know you were higher on Pickett coming out, so maybe you're willing to give him a little bit more of a chance, but I just feel like the Steelers' offensive line is still kind of a mess, and Freiermuth got hurt again, and so he's not going to be playing, and Deontay Johnson's hurt. So like they are dealing with injuries, but I'm just kind of out on the Steelers considering the state of this offense. And once again, on the other side, CJ Stroud looking strong. Similar situation to Anthony Richardson, where this game he didn't quite have the completion percentage, 16 of 30. But he threw for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns, and once again, no interceptions. And I'm sure you've seen the stat, but it's already going all over the place that he's the 6th player in NFL history to start his career with 4 straight games of 250 yards and multiple touchdowns. So, and with no interceptions. So, and for the record, the other 5 names on that list are Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, and Patrick Mahomes. So, in very good company. Yeah. And it's one of those stats where it's like, okay, like it's 4 games. It's a small sample size, but considering the names on that list, pretty good company to be in. And considering once again, the fact that he's just looked really freaking good to start. I don't know how you felt. Like obviously he was our number 1 quarterback in both of our classes. And I felt very highly on that. Like I thought there was a pretty big gap between him and Bryce Young personally, but he's even exceeding my expectations so far.
Yeah, like I remember when I made a bit of like a small Rodgers comparison, just in regards to the fact that he can make some, like he doesn't have to be in the perfect position sometimes, and he'll still make the perfect throw. And like and like he's blown me out of the water more with that. Like there was I forget what, I think it was a touchdown. Once again, I went back and watched this one. It was like a kind of like a play action read, but there's defenders already in his face. So obviously doesn't have time to set his feet, get his shoulders right. so his feet are cockeyed, and he still throws I believe it was probably one of the Nico Collins touchdowns, I think, down the seam. If not, it was to Dalton Schultz, obviously. But it was just.
I think it was the Schultz one. The Schultz one was an impressive throw where he had to roll out to the right.
Okay, maybe. I think the other one was in the pocket. So I'm thinking is the one I'm talking about is Nico Collins, I think. But
okay, then it was a Collins one,
or maybe it wasn't a touchdown. Regardless, it was still it was probably a first down conversion, to be honest. But it's still just the damnedest throw with people in his face, side armed. Obviously because someone's putting their hands up in front of him, screaming at him, not literally, but coming at him, and just made the perfect pass into like I said, probably Nico Collins' pocket, and he just then. People were calling Bryce Young a natural, but it just felt no. I feel like C.J. Stroud's more of the natural quarterback. So I think I said this last week, but be damned to Warnerlick and all that nonsense that came out that Stroud can't read defenses and stuff, because it's looking like the opposite. It's not looking like that's the issue at all.
Yeah, and I think it's because people buy into the whole BS of, he's an Ohio State quarterback. And it's but he's different than the guys that have played there before, because you think of the prototypical Ohio State quarterback in the past of when Fields was there, but even the guys before him with JT Barrett and some of those guys,
Cardale
Braxton
Jones.
Miller. Yeah, those guys are more athlete than quarterback, but Stroud's biggest thing, he was a really good pure pocket passer. I remember that one of the biggest critiques that he had coming out was that they called him a statue. They said that he was in the pocket too much.
Yeah.
And he's shown the ability, for the record, to move around. Like I said, I'm pretty sure that Schultz touchdown was him on the move outside the pocket, throwing it to the back of the end zone. So he's shown the ability to move. He's also willing to run. I mean, he had 4 carries for 16 yards. With your quarterbacks in the modern day NFL, you want 2 to 5 carries, because there's going to be plays where you got to use your legs. Yeah. And so you want them to show that ability, and he's done that. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like Stroud is proving us right, but it's just interesting that, I don't know, because Fields had the same criticism, is, he doesn't go to his second read. He doesn't read defenses, blah, blah, blah. And it just feels like that's more of a criticism that people are applying to Ohio State quarterbacks than necessarily the QB prospect themselves, because Stroud did not struggle with that, and yet they gave him the same criticisms.
Yeah, and once again, the whole applying a school to it's just Patrick Mahomes came from Texas Tech. That was a knock on him too. Oh, he came from Texas Tech. All these air raid, but no, come on, we obviously were wrong on that one. Watson was the first Clemson quarterback for a while, because there's a few duds that came out of there, and obviously Trevor Lawrence followed him, but different story.
And now all of a sudden everybody's probably going to talk about, he's a Clemson quarterback. Look at the track record. They have Watson and Lawrence. He's got to be good. Dabo produces QBs.
But that hasn't been the case recently too. I don't know, we're not a college football podcast, but as someone that kind of keeps an eye on college football, kind of been tough for Dabo, and Clemson haven't been relevant since those two guys left. Just saying.
Right, exactly. So, but I don't know. It's just a lazy take, that the whole Stroud thing. It's a lazy take. Evaluate the prospect. No. Don't have bias based on the school that he goes to.
Yeah, on the hat. Yeah, whatever. So nonetheless, and then Pickett. Yeah, I think we're starting to see he's starting to fall. And for me, it's that Daniel Jones-ish Ranger. He needs talent around him to really be good. Otherwise, he's not of a Stroud. Heck, I would take CJ. I think it's fair to say many would take Stroud over him right now, because you're starting to see, like we were alluding to, he can make plays that aren't in the playbook. You know what I mean? He can he can do more with less. Well, it seems like Pickett, as we're seeing with Pittsburgh, we've mentioned the line's an issue, and now they're dealing with injuries. You're starting to see, man, he's looking lesser than. So, so we'll see what happens. But man, CJ Stroud, I don't expect him to stop balling. And like we said, the last point that I want to wax poetically is we criticize man, he doesn't even have any weapons. So and he's been missing parts of his offensive line. They've even gone to their backups of their backups on their offensive line. And the last 2 weeks, he hasn't taken a sack. So once again, that shows very good pocket awareness, and just awareness in general that, hey, my line's not great. I got to move around more, get the ball, et cetera, et cetera. Things that I just criticized Sam Howell about. We don't have to really do that with Stroud, because he's already figured it out, or seeming like he's starting to get that picture in his head of how to play it in the NFL, or just the situation around him. So, the Warnerlick is dumb. So we'll just piggyback on that going forward. But good win for the Texans. They're 2-2, and so who knows, a team that myself too, we're all like, man, there's no chance this team makes the playoffs. I'm not saying they will, but their pieces are looking good. And also, Will Anderson also looking really good on the other side too, along with some of their other pieces over there. So exciting things in Houston.
And for the record too, back-to-back weeks they've scored 30 points. So
yeah, and they really haven't even gotten Dameon Pierce going.
Yeah.
And like I said, and their offensive line,
which was something I called out last week. Yeah, it was like we haven't really seen Pierce get going yet, and yet the offense is still looking good.
So wild. But alrighty, let's go over to the AFC West for a divisional matchup between the Chargers and Raiders, where the Chargers were victorious here, 24-17. Khalil Mack revenge game, something that I overlooked, and he definitely put that on notice as he had 6 sacks against his former squad, because technically he went his former squad's the Bears. Nonetheless, Chargers get the win here. John, what were your thoughts?
Good win from the Chargers. Herbert did get hurt, but it was on his non-throwing hand, and he's not expected to miss time, so that's good for him. It was good to see they had a semblance of a run game, because without Eckler, they have had basically no run game. So that was interesting. Also, Herbert took off 12 times, which I didn't notice watching the game. I did actually have this one because this was during the afternoon slate when I watched the Cowboys, and usually I have like a second game on the side screen, and I was watching this one, and I didn't notice it, which, once against the side screen, so it wasn't my full attention, but I didn't notice him taking off that much, and yet he did. 12 rushes. He also got 2 rushing touchdowns, so he was willing to do the dirty work and get it done on the ground, and you love to see that, especially considering that I'm heavily invested in Justin Herbert stock and fantasy. Other than that, Josh Palmer had a decent day. We didn't get to see a ton of Quentin Johnston, despite the fact that they were hyping up how he'd get a little bit bigger of a role. And I still don't love the overall output that the defense was able to give. They held them to 17 points, and Khalil Mack individually was really solid. Yeah. But I still just have concerns because this is going against a backup rookie quarterback who threw a pick, but they were still able to kind of move the ball. Jacobs, had, I don't know if it's his most successful game of the season, but he got in the end zone. So Jacobs kind of have a little bit of bounce back week. And this just felt like a game where the Chargers really should have blown him out. And I know I'm nitpicking here, but it's just because I'm not on the Staley train. So, it's good they got back-to-back wins, but it does feel like there's just a big added pressure on a few specific stars that they have to step up massively in order for these things to happen. Like if Khalil Mack doesn't get 6 sacks, take away half of those. That's 3 plays where potentially the Raiders could, make some differences, and maybe that keeps the drive alive. They get a touchdown, boom, it's a tie ball game. And once again, like I said, I know that I'm nitpicking here, but I just think that there's a lot of weight on Herbert. There's a lot of weight on Mack and Joey Bosa, and Bosa didn't even play in this one, I don't believe. So it just feels like there's a lot of pressure on a couple star players, and that shouldn't be the case considering the talent that this team does have.
It's hard to win this league, especially if you're just purely relying on that. And you mentioned 2 of those fumbles, Khalil Mack forced 2, I believe forced both of them, but 2 of the fumbles literally led directly to touchdowns because all the Chargers had to do was go 30 yards and drive the for a touchdown. So
exactly, like
you're saying, I agree with you. There's reason for concern for the Chargers going forward because, and then even. Their offense definitely seemed to have stalled out because I watched this game a little bit closer, especially on the second drive when Herbert threw that interception. Because so what happened with his hand too was I think he got stepped on, like a cleat literally just stepped on his hand. So that was unfortunate, and I think that kind of limited what they could do because he couldn't really handle it. He had issues handing off, obviously with the injured hand, and they put some sort of thing. At first they put some sort of contraption. And he looked like. He had a pincer or something. I don't know. And then they put a glove over it. So I don't think it'll be an issue going forward. But nonetheless, like you're saying, the offensive output too wasn't amazing either. In the past game, credit to the Raiders, they were able to kind of take away Keenan Allen. He had been having a ridiculous production going up into this game, but 3 for 32, pretty pedestrian, in regards to what he's been doing. But yeah, I'm with you in regards to the Chargers defense too, because Devontae Adams got hurt, and he was also like he came back, but he was obviously still a little bit hobbled with his injury. He wasn't perfect. Like there was a couple of tough catches that he didn't make, that maybe a fully healthy Devontae would have made and would have been a first down. So like besides the turnovers, I mean, and the sacks, like the Raiders, I wouldn't say they're the better team, but it was a much closer matchup than and I think to score.
If Jimmy Garoppolo plays in that game, honestly, they might have won the game because, like you said, like he might get the ball out first off faster, yes. So Khalil Mack isn't able to get all those sacks. And maybe there's not the fumbles, maybe he holds on to it. Like I said, I know I'm nitpicking because a win is a win, but it wasn't the most impressive win from the Chargers considering the circumstances.
Yeah. But last point, good for the Chargers. It seems like Josh Jacobs, like again, he held out, so and such. So, but it seems like he's kind of looking closer to what he was last season. Obviously, you mentioned he had more production, their leading rusher and their leading receiver this game. So it seems like they're more willing to lean on him now that he's been back in the building for a few weeks. So we'll see what happens going forward. But hopefully the Chargers can get it together. But all right, let's go to your game. Like you mentioned, this one I'll leave it to you because this one's pretty self-explanatory. Cowboys beat the Patriots 38-3. Literally Bill Belichick's worst loss as a coach. What were your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, we can gloss over this one. There wasn't a ton there. Like the defense for the Cowboys bounced back in a big way considering the disappointing performance the previous week. Deron Bland on the outside. I mean, the guy's a playmaker. If anyone doesn't know who Deron Bland is, rookie last year, had 5 interceptions playing in the nickel. Yeah, he in college played on the outside, so that's why when Trevon Diggs went down, it sucked, but I wasn't super worried because I knew that Deron Bland could go outside, and Jordan Lewis was previously a starter for us in the nickel. He's the next guy up who plays there. So, I mean, they at least have experience in those spots, and Deron Bland in this game, I mean, he got 2 picks, including a pick 6. And so the defense bounced back in a big way for the Cowboys. They did get a red zone touchdown, which I think they had not done the whole season. Like all their touchdowns were coming outside the red zone. And the announcers like Greg Olson and I can't remember the other guy's name, Greg Burkhardt or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
I could be wrong.
You may be right.
It's Kevin Burkhardt. I don't know.
Not
anyway. Point being,
personally, go ahead.
Point being, they were really harping on the Cowboys' lack of a red zone touchdown, and then when they finally got one, they're like, yeah. So, I mean, I guess good for them. They got the monkey off their back, but the Cowboys' offense did kind of stall out in the red zone again in this game, which I wasn't a big fan of. I feel like they really need to put an emphasis on figuring out those plays with inside the 20-yard line, because it feels like when they get the lack of space and the defense can kind of, sort of crunch in on them, we're not seeing them really be able to do a ton in that area. So although they won, that's kind of the one downside for Dallas that I think they got to fix. And for New England, just a bad game all around. Like I don't really know who to praise. It did suck too that Christian Gonzalez got hurt during the game. I don't know how long he's going to be out, if he's going to be out, but once he went out, CD started to have himself a day. So yeah, unfortunate.
And they lost Matt Judon. Matt Judon's already been ruled out for the year, so he's like, so obviously their best edge guy too.
Yeah.
Only other note I want to make is obviously Mac Jones is his worst. I would definitely say his worst performance as a pro. You mentioned the pick 6. I mean, he got away with it. I think a couple plays earlier, throwing to the other side of the field, just barely too. Like, come on, Mac. Like, it's one of those things that know who you are a little bit, and know like the good quarterbacks too. They know when they got away with something, and like you and I, we play games and stuff, and it's like sometimes you can't overstay your welcome. And you can't just keep going back to the well on certain things, and you got to know when you've gotten away with things. Yes.
Yeah. Fool me once, fool me twice, and come on, Mac. Like you can't do it twice.
Yeah. And then the fumble too, like when you got, it's fumbled, and then I think it was a scoop and score for y'all as well there. Like that's one, once again, like you're Mac Jones. You really just ran away from the pass rush. They're still coming, Mac. You can't sit there with the ball, and not protect the ball, and have one hand on it or just be loosey goosey with it. And he got strip sacked, and that that was pretty much it. So I'm not sitting here saying they should start Bailey Zappi at all. I think Mac Jones is still their best option. And what's going to, he's falls along kind of the Kenny Pickett's where he's going to need help around him. And we've mentioned fourth New England. Like who skill position wise scares you? No one really. I mean, Hunter Henry's their best receiver, and no offense to Hunter, but it's the shell of Hunter Henry. Even when Hunter Henry was great, he wasn't a dynamic tight end that was, can win a game by himself, basically, or dominate a game by himself. So
yeah,
a lot of work in New England on both sides of the ball, and to go forward on for Dallas. Good bounce back after that tough loss against the Arizona Cardinals the week prior. So now y'all get to look forward to the Niners, I believe, next week. So good litmus test for you guys. But speaking of the Niners, let's go there because they took care of business against the Cardinals, 35-16. It was a Christian McCaffrey show, although people, Brock Purdy was really good too. They only have one completion, I believe. So there's that too. What are your thoughts on this? And I have a question for you whenever you're done.
Good win for the Niners, but once again, the Cardinals, they were in it. They were in it. There was a point in that third quarter where it was 21-16. Mm-hmm. Like, it was a close game. The Cardinals continue to be a really impressive team. They continue to be a team that I think is surprising a lot of people, and you cannot overestimate them. And so, the Cardinals are in it. Now, the Niners, at the same time, are just a really good team. They were going to handle their business. Brock Purdy was near perfect. I mean, 1 incompletion. McCaffrey scored 4 touchdowns. Brandon Ayuk had a huge game, in the absence of Debo. So, yeah, the Niners, it felt like business as usual. They once again, it was close, but they pulled away late in the fourth quarter, and they handled their business. So
quick question. I know it was really early in the season, but I've heard some people already rumble. As of right now, would you put Christian McCaffrey in the MVP conversation?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I would.
I was curious.
Especially since, I don't feel like the QBs, there's a true guy who's separated themselves yet, Mm-hmm. I mean, before this week, if you asked a lot of people, they would have said Tua. So that just goes to show that it doesn't feel like I feel like, I don't know, if you had to pick an MVP right now, who would you pick? Josh Allen, maybe?
But it's when he just entered kind of re-entered the conversation.
So, I don't know. I would 100% think that McCaffrey's in that conversation because, it's also, I have a lower view of Brock Purdy than most people. So I think that bolsters the rest of that offense's, my opinion of the rest of that offense and Kyle Shanahan. But yeah, McCaffrey, you know it because you beat me in a fantasy league with him, but I also have him in a league. And yeah, the guy is an absolute weapon. And quite frankly, if we had to end the season right now and pick one, I might pick him.
Yeah, I would too. I was just curious because I've heard some I just heard, the general, people arguing. I heard one person try to throw Brock Purdy in there. I'm like, come on.
No, come on, dude.
You throw Josh Dobbs in there, I think Dobbs would be pretty close if you reverse the situations in regards to production, while, it may not be as pretty for Purdy on the other side with lesser talent. But nonetheless.
It's literally, we're 4 games into the season, and he's got 459 rushing yards, 6 touchdowns, and hold on, how many receiving yards? He has 141 receiving yards. So that guy has 600 total yards and 7 touchdowns in 4 games.
And he still has that crazy streak. I think he's starting to getting crazy streak of consecutive games with a touchdown too. So consistently producing for Christian McCaffrey. But all right, I'm just curious your thoughts. But yeah, so I'm with you there, and I don't have anything else to add. Although Arizona, hey, some few bright spots. I want to shout Michael Wilson. He was the guy.
Yeah.
He was kind of on my outside 5. He was tough because wasn't a lot of tape of him in college because he was dealing with a lot of injuries. So that was one of the reasons why he fell. But I think if he can stay healthy, I think we're seeing why he was kind of in that conversation minus his medicals. But, his medicals were the reason that he fell. So, hopefully that's behind him and he can keep building on it because he's starting to build some momentum here with Arizona. And it'll be interesting to see. It seems like just, shooting from the hip here. Just seems like they're going to take their time with Kyler, and it seems like it's the right choice because, don't want to risk him, and we'll see. Maybe they're not tanking for the number 1 pick. We'll see, though. Obviously, got to see the rest of the season play out, and they're still 1-3, so it's not like they're that far away from doing that. But Niners take care of business. Let's go to the Sunday night game where it looked like the Chiefs were going to take care of business. They jump up 17-0. After the first quarter, it's looking like, man, this is it. But Jets come back. It was one of, if not probably the best game from Zach Wilson as a pro, as many got to saw. But as the Jets, unfortunately, though, weren't able to make the comeback, Chiefs win 23-20. What were your thoughts in regards to this one?
We got to start off giving Zach Wilson his flowers because the guy has been getting destroyed, ridiculed, blamed for all the problems that the Jets have had for quite some time. And he had a fantastic game. He absolutely kept the Jets in it. I would dare say that he put them in a position to win this game, and they should have won this game had it not been for, that I don't want to put it all in the one play, but like Sauce should not have held there. I'm pretty sure it was Sauce, right?
Yeah, it was Sauce.
On that interception. Yeah, and I saw him, he had a deleted tweet where he blamed his race and then changed it. He said if I was white, maybe they wouldn't have called it. And then he changed to say maybe if I was a Swiftie, they wouldn't have called it, which was a more comedic take. But come on, Sauce. Like you watch the play clear as day. Your arm is across his entire body, across his chest, holding his other shoulder. Like they're gonna, even if you're not actually holding, putting your arm in that position is gonna be called every single day of the week.
And you saw the extension of you saw the jerseys like stretch out, and once basically they see the jersey, getting stretched out by in his hands, the cause of it, like it's kind of like the ref's gonna throw it.
They're gonna call that, and so. Yeah, and they would have got the interception there. I thought the Jets played a fantastic game just overall. My one critique is I think it's time to stop Breece Hall's pitch count, whatever they're doing over there. Like, he's a game changer. We saw it with that one big run. I mean, he wasn't the most efficient on the overall day outside of that run, but if you give him enough opportunities, the guy's going to make explosive plays, and we've seen that throughout his career, even going back to last year, the game in which he got hurt against Denver. He had like a 69-yard reception that went down on the 2 or 1 yard line. And then he also had a 40-yard run in that game before getting hurt. And that was in the first quarter alone. The guy is a big time playmaker. I think of Saquon Barkley when he came out. That was kind of a big thing that everybody really highlighted from him is he's a home run hitter. He can do a lot, but the biggest thing that adds to Saquon's value is he can be having a bad game all game long, and then boom, one carry can go 60 yards to the house, because that's the kind of talent that he is. And Breece Hall, I think, is one of those guys, and I think that they need to unleash him a little bit more, because if Zach Wilson can keep this kind of performance up, I'm not saying he's going to, but they do play Denver next week, so he's getting a little bit of a layup game. If he can continue to play well, and you mix in the run game with Breece, fully unleash him and allow him to be more of the focal point of this offense, I think it takes pressure off of Zach. I think that it allows for Garrett Wilson to not have to be so heavily featured. He can step up when it matters, and maybe you win this game because, Breece Hall only got 9 carries, and I don't know. That's all I'm saying. I feel like this was a winnable game for the Jets. I applaud the defense and just honestly the overall team because I thought they had it. They played a really good game. It was a well-coached game from the Jets coaching staff. Way to stay resilient for the Jets. I like what I saw. And for the Chiefs, you got away with one. You got away with a win that, like I said, you deserved it because you won the game fair and square, but they need to be better because that performance was not the Kansas City Chiefs that we know and love.
I love the I'm sure you've seen this meme where people are saying there's Swifties out there that are gonna watch, that are gonna step away from this game thinking that, man, that Zach Wilson guy is better than Mahomes because he had a better game statistically. Yeah. And I'm sure you saw the other statistic where this is the first time an opposing quarterback has had beaten Mahomes in terms of yards, touchdowns, and better and interceptions.
So I sent that to you, which I don't know if you'd seen it before, but the stat is that this is the first time in Mahomes' career, either NFL or college, that an opposing QB has had more yards, more touchdowns, more completions, and less interceptions in a game. That's a crazy stat, and it was Zach Wilson who was the one that did it.
Of all people that was going to do it, no one had Zach Wilson to do that. Not that anyone's aware of that stat, but I think that goes to show a lot. But yeah, I mean, everyone knows. I already mentioned last week how I felt, so it's good to see the Jets. Like also on offense, it seems like they kind of have opened up the playbook a little bit more, as opposed to just try and fit his strengths, as opposed to. They're kind of running, they feel like the Aaron Rodgers offense of, hey, quick reads, quick throws, quick decisions. Just didn't really fit Zach. We all knew that he was having issues being a consistent thrower and, is just not as polished as Rodgers, obviously. So, it's, we saw this game, a few more, some rollouts, just not only simplifying it, but giving him opportunities to be aggressive too and making the reads simpler, it felt like.
Right.
And just giving him more confidence. But in regards to this one too, in regards to the Chiefs, yeah, Mahomes, like a couple of those interceptions, especially one of them, like is I was a little too casual, I think, and I think this is a good wake up game maybe for him because yeah, just some uncharacteristic Mahomes mistakes where got too casual with the ball and obviously made mistakes, but I do want to give credit to Andy Reid because even with that and maybe because he was having an off day, stuck with the run and was patient and just fed you talked about freeing Breece Hall, but fed Isaiah Pacheco and let him kind of eat this game. Yes, because obviously helped kind of stabilize them, sustain some drives, especially late in the game, and then help kind of keep them afloat. So yeah, Chiefs kind of get away with one here, but hey, they're really darn good. But the Jets, I know they lost. It sucks, but and we'll see because this is a key point. Can you? Yes, you lost and you had a great performance. Can you build on that, or are you just going to be the people that you show up next week and you lose and then you're always going to be thinking about but we had that one game. We'll see if them, not only Zach Wilson but the Jets as a whole can build going forward on that good performance. But like I said, win's a win. Chiefs win that one. Let's go to last and probably least the Monday nighter as the Seattle Seahawks, despite losing Geno Smith for a good portion, for a little bit of the game, having to throw in Drew Lock, didn't matter as the Seahawks win 24-3. Yeah, there's issues in New York in regards to the Giants, as now the criticism probably shifts there in the Big Apple. But what are your thoughts in regards to this one?
Yeah, I mean, the Giants, just quite frankly, the Giants are a terrible team. They're not good. A lot of people, considering last year, expected them to maybe be better than they are now, but I don't think you and I are surprised about that. I didn't have them making the playoffs. Did you? I can't remember.
I did not.
Yeah, so we both expected them to take a step back. I thought, quite frankly, they were a little bit lucky to make the playoffs last season just based on the state of the NFC. And then the fact that they won a playoff game, everybody starts hyping them up because they win a game. And as we've talked about, it was against the fraudulent Vikings, who not everybody else is seeing are, of course, fraudulent. So I don't know. I saw this coming. I don't think they're a good team. And Saquon can't stay healthy. It's unfortunate, but that's kind of been the reality of his career. And they haven't they haven't adjusted in a way that they are prepared for that to happen, despite the fact that they know this. And that's not me taking shots at Matt Breida, although he didn't have a great game. That's just saying, like, the criticisms around the Giants have been the same for years. The offensive line. And this year, the offensive line is partially due to injury because Andrew Thomas is a stud. Like, there's no debating that. And he's just not healthy. But the offensive line has been a critique. And then the lack of weapons. And the weapons, they've tried to, adjust that concern with Kadarius Toney, with Jalen Hyatt, with some of these different guys, with Darren Waller. And yet none of them are working. And ultimately, I don't know. All I'm saying is that, like, CJ Stroud is in an offense that I think people would argue has probably equal or lesser weapons, considering the state of Darren Waller. Like, Darren Waller is a better player than I would say any of the weapons that the Texans have. At least, when he's at his peak and healthy. So CJ Stroud is doing a lot more with equal or less is basically what I'm saying. And so my point is is at what point are people going to stop making excuses for Daniel Jones? The guy's getting $40 million a year now, and on the season, he has pretty pitiful stats at, what is it? He's got 765 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and 3 fumbles. At what point are we going to stop making excuses for Daniel Jones and just realize that he's not a good quarterback? I've been saying this for a long time, but all the people who said that Brian Daboll was the reason that Josh Allen was good and Daboll was the reason that, Josh Allen became who he is. Well, Josh Allen, is still putting up crazy numbers with Daboll gone, and Daniel Jones is arguably worse than he was last year. Last year, he only threw 5 interceptions, and so many people threw that in my face. It's like, look, Daniel Jones is getting better. Yeah, but he's not improving in terms of like the actual production. Like, yeah, he's turning the ball over less, but he's still not throwing a lot of touchdowns. He threw 15 last year. That's not great. He still doesn't have a ton of yards, and now we're seeing the turnover problems back. And he's not throwing touchdowns still. Like, he's still throwing a lack of touchdowns. And I don't know. I just, if Daboll can't fix him, because I think that most people would argue and consider that Brian Daboll is like a top 5 offensive mind in the NFL. And, if that's what we're saying and he can't fix Daniel Jones, then like at what point are we going to figure out that Daniel Jones just isn't the guy? I think the funny part is that they just paid him too. So if they get a terrible draft pick, are they willing to do what it takes and go get a quarterback? Obviously, if they got the number 1 pick and got Caleb Williams, yeah, like I think anybody is going to do that, no matter who your quarterback is for the most part. There's obviously a few teams that wouldn't, but a lot of these teams that are at the bottom, Chicago, Denver, New York, like these kind of teams, despite having a QB they're kind of like, yeah, we like that guy. If you can get Caleb Williams, you're going to do it. But if you can't get him, if they have an opportunity to get Drake May or Quinn Ewers or, whoever the heck is going to be the QB at the end of the year that's at that spot, are the Giants willing to go and do what it takes to get a different quarterback? Because like I said, I don't think that Daniel Jones has been the guy. He hasn't been the guy the whole time they're there. They finally make the playoffs last year with a kindergarten offense surrounding Saquon Barkley to just make sure that Daniel Jones doesn't cost them the game. And when Saquon's not there, they can't do anything. They can't do anything.
Yeah, so I agree with you in regards to I don't know the exact fix, but obviously it doesn't help when like you said, when you're allotting $40 million to this guy and he's just he like we mentioned was like kind of like a Kenny Pickett, some of the other guys, he can't make more than what's he can't elevate the team on his own. He can't make plays.
But at least those guys, Pickett, Mac Jones, they're still on rookie contracts.
Yes.
Stuart Jones, like he's getting paid borderline top 10 money right now.
Yeah. So I don't know the fix, but I think I want to look another point of criticism. You gotta look at like offensive line depth. They gotta change scouts or training or something, because you gotta have it. Like, I know you can't have you lose Andrew Thomas. Yes, he's great, but it can't be this horrible when he's gone. Yeah. Like, it's inexcusable. Like, absolutely. So they got to fix that. In this game,
same with running back depth too. Like,
yes,
Seattle goes out and gets they already had Kenneth Walker. They get Zach Charbonnet. Like, why are the Giants routinely relying on the ghost of Devonta Freeman that one year, and now Matt Breida, and just like these veterans who it's like they're past their point of actually being like productive. Like, get a young guy in there who might actually maybe make a splash. Like, what's going on?
I don't know. But in regards to this game, all I want to mention else is, how about our guy, Devin Witherspoon? Because he played.
He's a dog.
Yeah, he played out, and and that pick 6 too. Like we mentioned, one Chris Daniel Jones. If there's a general rule, if you're throwing towards the sideline, you do not want to be late. And Daniel Jones was late. You can see on that play, he kind of took a second to pull the trigger, and especially in this league, guys are going to jump that on those little out routes, and or a little stick, out routes or whatever. It's usually an option. Either you sit or you just run the out route. It didn't matter because he ran it, and he also had I think he also had a sack too. Like, he was everywhere. Just like we both, one of the reasons why we both had him as number 1, because this kid is just everywhere. He's just like a Tasmanian devil at corner. So it was great to see him. I think that was his first game too. So it was great to see him in his debut already make an impact. And it sucked though for Jamal Adams. I know it was a big moment in game finally coming back, in New York where and then he had to leave in the first drive because of the concussion rules and such. But kudos to Seattle for roughing it out too. Like I said, without Geno Smith for a drive or two, and Drew Lock still managed to get them down to score a touchdown. It was almost would have counted for him, but Noah Fant was like literally a yard short. So, good win for Seattle. And for the Giants, got a lot of question marks going forward, at least for the season. And we'll have to see how it all plays out and how they adjust. But that is it. Those are our week 4 reactions. Anything else you wanted to notate before we call it there?
No, I think that's going to be it.
Yeah.
I mean, the one notable thing now is that, the guys who were on the physical and form list can now come off. So Jonathan Taylor, Kyler Murray, Cooper Kupp, a lot of these guys are now eligible. Now, will they? I've already heard for Kyler that they're thinking he's probably still maybe another month away. Yeah. So not him, but we'll see about the Jonathan Taylor stuff, because from all the reports I've read, because I'm still heavily invested in this as a fantasy owner of him in multiple leagues, that he still doesn't want to play for him, but they said he's going to practice tomorrow, because we're recording this on Tuesday. They said he's going to practice on Wednesday, so we'll see what happens tomorrow, and who knows, maybe there's a chance he plays this weekend. I don't know.
Yeah, before we sign off, I do want to say I wouldn't be shocked if he does some sort of hold-in thing where I'll limit practice just so that he's doing football stuff, he's in shape. But like I said, it will be very interesting to see will he get any work, or will he be active for the games? And
right.
then because there's a bit of risk. Do you want to potentially injure your trade asset, and him too? He may not want to be injured to risk injury for because that's part of this whole deal, is trying to get a contract. So if he does get injured, a good one, at least he's financially set. But that'll be interesting to see what happens with him. And then
Cooper Kupp and Puka could be fun too as a duo.
Yeah, that might save Matthew Stafford from getting killed more, is actually having his Cooper Kupp back along with Puka and Nakua. That'll be fun in one of my leagues. The one I had 2 quarterbacks. I did draft Cooper Kupp, and luckily I got Puka Nakua after week 1. Because I was bottom of the waiver wire. So, it'll be very interesting to see when they get back. It'll be tough to manage at first, but nonetheless. Regardless, as always, feel free to rate, review, and such, whether you're watching or listening. And we'll be back to make our Week 5 picks later in the week. And for myself,